Welcome you all here. So we do these webinars monthly, so you can look for them on the newsletter on our calendar. We're very excited this month to have one of our own, our past state board chairman, Ellen Honeycutt, who's going to be presenting on gardening for birds. My name is Michael Cowan, so I'm the state board chairman and also an active member of North Metro chapter, and the education committee of North Metro is the one that is bringing you this webinar. I do want to turn it over to Ellen, state chairman for 6 years, and prior to our reorganization as a statewide organization, she had also been president of the society. So she's been involved for a long time, and she is by far the native plant guru in terms of plant ID in the whole state. So that's why we're so excited to bring her presentation to you tonight. So Ellen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I think I first did this presentation for what was then called Atlanta Audubon 10 years ago. I really like this presentation. It's one of my favorite ones to give because birds are just wonderful. I would love to have so many of them around my house, and I know that you guys feel the same way or you wouldn't be here. So what we're going to talk about is gardening for birds, and we're going to talk about how to feed them and throw in a few extra things about water and cover and things like that later. But mostly they come to us because they're looking for food. And we can support them not just by the seeds we put out, but by the plants we choose. So I first started gardening in earnest about 20 years ago after my kids got old enough for me to go outside by myself. And I started seeing birds. I was already using native plants or really getting into it. So I started to see things come to my plants or in the trees. Some of the common birds that we all know are these. Then, of course, we put up a bird house and started to see more birds staying longer. So exciting always to see the first bluebird. And then I did put out some seed feeders and I started to get some birds coming to that. And a friend of mine told me that I should add suet, that I would get different birds. And sure enough, that happened. The woodpeckers started coming. The warblers started coming because they really like protein. But there was always a few kind of holding back. And then I started seeing some on the ground, of course, and this one doesn't come to my feeder. This is the eastern towhee, this little ruby crown kinglet. They weren't coming to the feeders, although I think sometimes they do, but I would see them in the woods. And then I found this list online, and this is really just half of it, but it kind of struck me to realize that here's a bunch of birds that I wasn't seeing coming to my feeder at all. And I wondered how I could get more. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk first about what do birds eat, because we can't really satisfy their needs if we don't know what they eat. And there's really 5 groups. There's frugivores, granivores, insectivores, nectivores, and omnivores. And so I'm going to talk about each one of these and what we might do in our garden to help satisfy what they eat. Now, I am talking about primarily what they eat as an adult. And some of the birds you'll see kind of eat some from more than one category, but we can handle that. So nectivores, of course, mostly those of us who are looking to support them are hummingbirds, but there are orioles as well. Here's a hummingbird getting some nectar out of this Malva viscus, which is related to hibiscus. Frugivores, we have things like cedar waxwings, mockingbirds, catbirds, tanagers. So they're primarily as adults going to be looking for fruit to eat. Here, for example, is a cedar waxwing eating a service berry. Granivores, these are our seed eaters. Goldfinches, house finches, cardinals, sparrows, pigeons, and doves. And they're the ones we're likely to see if we put seeds out. There you go. Easy to get one of those just by having a platform feeder. Insectivores, this is a big group, and it's not one that we hear about a lot, but it's the warblers, swallows, wrens, titmouses, phoebes, bluebirds, robins, brown thrashers, the eastern towhees. These are primarily eating insects for their diet. So what we're going to want to do, and I'll explain how, is get more insects into our garden. Another thing I want to point out when we're talking about insectivores is that you will have parents bringing back insects for their babies. 96% of baby birds eat insects in the nest, even if they don't eat insects as adults. Omnivores, these are the guys that eat a little bit of everything, including carrion, but we're not going to set any carrion out in our garden. But it's the woodpeckers, the turkeys, the crows, and the blue jays. So, how can we support all these different birds in our garden? And since you're here, you already know it's about native plants. Now, there was a handout that I provided, and there should be a link in the chat to it if you haven't downloaded it already. And it's going to list some of the plants that I've talked about, that I'm going to talk about, so that you don't have to take as many detailed notes. So when it comes to attracting nectivores, and I'm primarily going to speak to hummingbirds here, the plants they're looking for are tubular in shape. They have got the perfect beak and the perfect tongue to reach the nectar at the end of the tube. So what you're going to see as I go through the plants is that they have that. These plants, their flowers have that in common. So red columbine, this is one of our spring bloomers, and in fact is blooming right now. But the nectar is up there at the base of the flower, which the flower looks upside down, but they would come in from below and then get the nectar. Cardinal flower, one of our summer bloomers. Again, you can kind of see that the shape of the flower is such that the nectar is at the base. Salvia is a good one. This is scarlet sage. And you might start to say to yourself, well, she's just showing red flowers, so it must also be that they are red. But that was just a coincidence because I can now go to lyre leaf sage, Salvia lyrata, and show you that this is also one and it's blue. But again, look at the shape of the flower and you'll see that's going to be attractive to hummingbirds. Coral honeysuckle, our native honeysuckle, just perfect for our native hummingbirds. Red buckeye, just kind of finishing up flowering here in the metro area. Red buckeye also has that tubular flower, lots of flowers on the inflorescence. So you can see that this is going to support hummingbirds, not just today, but tomorrow and probably for a week or 10 days. Native azaleas are also great for hummingbirds as well as large butterflies. So you can see that when we're choosing things for the birds, we are often, in fact, maybe even always, supporting another pollinator as well. Crossvine, this is an evergreen native vine that is blooming now or just finishing up blooming, usually high up in the trees. I often don't even realize it's blooming until I see one of the spent flowers on the ground. This is a great display of a crossvine, although this is probably a cultivar because it's all red. But you can see that would be a feast for birds. So this is what's on your handout, just a summary of the plants that I'm talking about. So native vines, some perennials, some shrubs. In addition, of course, I like to remind you that hummingbirds eat small bugs like mosquitoes and spiders. So attracting them to your yard brings you a little bit of a pest control as well. Frugivores. Now, when I first started thinking about gardening for birds, the message then was just plant anything with berries, and that's all you have to do. But now we can already start to see that if that's all we did, that we'd only be supporting our frugivores, which is only one category. But we still want to support them, so let's talk about what's good for them. This is Hawthorn Winter King. It is a cultivar, but it's a native plant, so it's Crataegus viridis Winter King, and it's actually being used a lot lately in design landscapes. I live or used to live near Milton, and they're putting it in all the roundabouts. So it's a beautiful white flowering spring tree, and then it has red fruits that persist into the winter, which is very helpful for our resident birds. We do have winter residents that are frugivores, and they would be looking for fruit. Viburnum, this is Viburnum nudum, but all of our viburnums are just great bird supporting, frugivore supporting plants. I love this one because unlike some of the other ones, the berries start out as pink and then they age to blue. So it's one of my favorites, and it's very moisture tolerant. So if you need something for a wet area, this is good for that as well. And we don't have to give up beauty when we're gardening for birds. This is the flower of that same plant. Viburnum nudum. And look at all of those yellow tipped stamens. Those are full of pollen. Be great for pollinators. Small bees, beetles would come in here and feast on that. And it's their pollination that then creates the berries that we need for the birds. And you get outstanding fall color from viburnums. This one happens to be black haw viburnum, Viburnum prunifolium. So I encourage people to use viburnums for lots of different reasons. Spring blooms, fall color, birds. It's a great native shrub, any one of them. Then we have black cherry. Now, black cherry is not always very well admired, especially if it's parked over your car, because people feel like the fruits are messy. But it really is an outstanding bird plant, not just for the small fruits like these, but we're going to talk about it again when we talk about insectivores. And here is a blue grosbeak on one of our native cherries. I would like to see that bird in my yard. Chickasaw plum, this would be for larger birds, and they probably would make a mess of it, but it is a small fruit. It's related to black cherry. They're both in the Prunus genus, so it's going to come up again when we talk about insectivores. Here's another hawthorn. This is Washington hawthorn, very pretty leaf. And this one gets passed out a lot. If you've ever gotten trees from the Arbor Day Foundation, you probably got one of these because they love to include it. Oh, this is a favorite. Look how pretty that is. But it is pokeweed, and not a lot of people like it, but the birds love it. But what a fantastic color combination. So you don't, I'm not saying you have to plant it, but if you have a large yard and maybe it pops up over on the side of the yard, perhaps you could still leave it for them. Blueberries. I love to give this talk in person because then I can look at all of you and say, everybody raise your hand if you knew that blueberries are native. All the blueberries you buy in the store came from southeastern blueberry stock. Even if they're growing them in Peru, they took our fruit down there to grow to sell back to us in the winter, just like we brought peaches and almonds over here to grow. So, but blueberries are native, so feel good about growing them and let the birds have a few. I'm here again, don't have to give up good looking flowers. Blueberry flowers are beautiful. They're usually blooming in early April, so they're one of our earliest shrubs to bloom. So you can have a beautiful shrub and fruit too. And you can also be supporting a special pollinator. This is the southeastern blueberry bee. She is a specialist on blueberries. So when you grow blueberries for yourself, for your birds, for beauty, you're also supporting her because this is a specialist plant. And look how cute she is. I can hear you all just admiring her. But anyway, so some of our plants, even when we're growing them for birds, are going to support other pollinators. Here's Virginia creeper. Again, I can almost hear some of you groan, but it is a fantastic bird plant. I finally got this to bloom and set fruit by allowing it to climb up the side of my house, which my husband was not very thrilled about. But these berries didn't last but a couple days. The birds adore them. So it's a great one, if you can, to keep around for the birds. Beautyberry, very popular with gardeners, very popular with birds. So you can feel good about growing it. It's a nice full sun native shrub, fairly deer resistant. So you can really enjoy it and they will enjoy it. Chokeberry is one of our large shrubs. Usually it needs a freeze for the berries to taste good. That's how it got that name, but very good for our winter residents because again, it is one that persists in the winter. But in the spring, like right now, it's blooming right now. This is what it looks like. So it's just a gorgeous shrub. But it is a large shrub, so you want to make sure you give it some room. Serviceberry, one of my favorite trees to recommend. The fruits are delicious. They taste like a lot like blueberries. You can use them to make jams and pies like the early settlers did. But you really do have to beat the birds to them because they will eat them very quickly. Here's the flowers in the spring. Great fall colors. So I certainly do like to recommend serviceberry. Hearts of Bustin, always a fun one to talk about. Those funky little dangling seeds, that weird combination of orange and pink, and the birds love it. Cardinals, who are really granivores, but they seem to enjoy it as well. Dogwoods, very iconic southern plant. Many of you know that the flowers are actually just these little greenish yellow things in the center, and then that's where you'll see the fruit form. But it's a fantastic plant for birds. It's gorgeous in the spring and has really nice fall color too, so keep planting that one. Plants for frugivores, native shrubs, native trees, all very good for the birds. And this is on your handout. Attracting granivores. So again, if we put out seed, we're going to get granivores. So that is true, but some of us are cheap, some of us are lazy, some of us are out of town. So it's nice to have some plants in the garden for when you run out of seed. We'll start with sunflower. Sunflower is a native plant. It was shipped over to Russia and Ukraine, where they actually grow a lot of it. But it is a U.S. native. This one is the annual, and that center part is just full of tiny flowers that are going to be pollinated by bees and turn into seeds. Here's one of our perennial sunflowers. This is swamp sunflower, narrow-leaved swamp sunflower. So it's going to perform the same function, just with smaller flowers, fewer seeds, but we will have many, many more flowers than the sunflower. And all of those will turn into seeds in the center. Silphium, also called rosin weed, is a very similar looking plant to sunflowers, and it acts the same way. It has those ray flowers that go around the end, the disc flowers in the center that get pollinated primarily by bees, although birds will use them, I mean butterflies will use them as well. But then the birds come afterwards. This is a picture of a silphium seed head after all the flowers have been pollinated and the seed has been set. That the seed are these little black dots all around, and in between every one of these pieces of green is a fat black seed. And the stem is strong enough. I have seen a goldfinch just perch on the head of that flower and pluck the seeds out. So very, very good for birds. Purple coneflower, I like to think of this as one of the poster children for native plants. Almost anything you ever see about native plants, they will put a picture of purple coneflower on there. We even have a license plate with it. But I call this one a win-win-win kind of plant, meaning it's beautiful for us. You're going to get the butterflies that are going to come in and use it. Things will pollinate it, bees and beetles and even the butterflies, and then it'll turn into seeds for our granivores. So all of us get to enjoy it. Similar is the black-eyed Susan, which we also have a license plate for. Another poster child for native plants, but that whole center will open up one at a time, a bunch of tiny flowers, and will get pollinated and make seeds. So another great one to have, and fortunately it is very popular at sales. This is a different species. The previous picture was Rudbeckia hirta, which is the classic brown-eyed, black-eyed Susan. This one is the one that you see a lot in landscaping. Rudbeckia fulgida. And this one, actually, I took this picture at McDonald's, but it's a great one, very durable. It's a very good perennial. The previous one is a short-lived perennial, but this one not only returns, it actually increases. And I really should be talking about our plant sale this weekend. We'll have both of these at the plant sale as well as purple coneflower. So if you're in need of that, stop by. We'll be in Alpharetta. Asters and Stone Mountain Daisy, which you may know, Stone Mountain Daisy is actually one of our annual sunflowers, but it got the daisy name and that stuck. But this is at one of our member gardens in Gwinnett County, where she had Georgia aster growing with Stone Mountain Daisy. Both of these make lots of seeds in the center and are good for the birds. In fact, this is a goldfinch in the fall eating seeds off of a native aster. Eupatorium, this is the plant that you see in late summer, early fall, all over the side of the road, mixing and mingling with goldenrod. But it is great for insects and it's great for birds. This is a American lady butterfly nectaring on it. And as a result of her efforts, the flowers will get pollinated. It'll make seeds. And then here again is a photo of goldfinches going after the seeds of that eupatorium. So same type of plant, just a few months later, and these guys are feasting on it. Anise hyssop is also great for bees, but then creates seeds that the goldfinches will go after. And I took this picture in my yard, well, out the window. Native grasses. This is Indian grass, making some very plump looking seeds there. And you want to leave that standing so that the birds can feast on that all winter long. And then there's our trees. This is a cardinal eating the seeds of our tulip tree, the ones that you find all over the ground. Well, the birds are looking for them, so just know that just because they're on the ground doesn't mean they're done with them yet. So plants for granivores, we have some perennials primarily, and sedges and grasses, and you leave these intact so that they can get the seeds even into the winter. Again, for those of us that are lazy or out of town, bird seed can run out. So if we have these in our garden, then there's a chance that we can keep feeding them. Omnivores, I said turkeys were omnivores. So let's talk about what they like. But in fact, we talked about all the other things, and they like all of those. They like berries, they like seeds, but there's one extra thing that they like that the others weren't eating. And this is our white oak here, and they make acorns. So omnivores really like acorns. They're usually larger birds, and they can eat them. So make sure you have an oak or two if you can. If you're in a small yard, but your neighbor has an oak, then consider it your oak too, because that's as close as you're going to get. So plants for omnivores, easy group to support, um, because all the other things you did are going to benefit them, and then just make sure you have some oaks. The oaks in the white oak group ripen the first year and have less tannin, so they are usually a bit more popular with wildlife than the red oak group. But of course, those get eaten as well. Now, I saved insectivores for last because it's not such an easy discussion. They want bugs, and we need to figure out how to give them bugs, how to grow bugs. And I hope that you have seen this statistic before. This came out of research through Doug Tallamy, where they monitored with a camera a chickadee nest, probably more than one, and then they counted how many times the parents brought food back for the babies. Usually in a chickadee, it's 3 to 4 babies, and they're in the nest for about 2 weeks. So, well, let's say 2 weeks, 7,500 bugs. They can be caterpillars. They can be caterpillars and spiders, but most of them are caterpillars because, as Doug Tallamy likes to say, they are soft and they're easy to stuff down the throat of a baby bird. So you can see if we want breeding birds in our yard, we're going to want to have lots of bugs. So how do we grow bugs? Well, I'm going to come back to the black cherry as an example because I wrote about this on my blog some years ago, and I consider this to be one of the most perfect plants for birds in Georgia. Number one, it has flowers when they need it. So even some birds might actually eat small flowers, but then it makes those fruits, but it also makes a lot of bugs. So let's talk about how it's going to make bugs because we need that 7,500 bugs. So we're going to use native plants. And I want to use the monarch as an example because it is one that all of us, many of us, are familiar with. And we learned it in school that monarchs need a specific plant on which to lay their eggs. If they don't have it, they won't be able to lay eggs, and there won't be any new caterpillars, and in the future, there would be fewer adults. So no eggs, no caterpillars, no adults. Milkweed, of course, is the plant. This is one of the most commonly available milkweeds. This is swamp milkweed, known as Asclepias incarnata, and we will have a little bit for sale at the plant sale. And it's great. This is the orange one, Asclepias tuberosa, and here is a caterpillar just eating. I saw this blooming on the side of the road and I pulled over and that caterpillar was already there. So this is another great and available one that you can find to add to your garden so that you can grow more monarchs. But as I said, I like to use monarch as an example that's actually true for all the butterflies and moths in our area that they need their special plant. Now, some have more than one plant that they have evolved to use. So monarch evolved to use milkweed. She's not going to lay her eggs on oaks. She's not going to lay her eggs on crepe myrtles. She's only going to lay them on milkweed. This is the spicebush swallowtail, which wraps itself up into a leaf. And you can see here, I've actually pried the leaf open to get a good look at it. And it is a host on several different plants. Spicebush is one of them. Sassafras is one of them. And so she has some choices when it comes time to lay her eggs. And if something happens to, say, sassafras, but spicebush is still around, she'll always be able to lay some eggs. So this is the spicebush swallowtail here. And here's sassafras. So let's take a look. This is on the back of your handout or page 2 if you printed it. And it is the top 12 woody plants as identified through research by Doug Tallamy. And the woody plants are actually the most supportive of all. This is where you're going to see the big numbers. So to read this chart, what this is saying is that oaks, which are in the scientific genus Quercus, are the host plant for 534, although to be honest, that number has gone up, 534 different species of moths and butterflies in our area. So the common name is Lepidoptera. That includes both moths and butterflies. And so if you had an oak, there are 534 different moths and butterflies that could actually use your tree as a host plant. Number 2, black cherry, 456. So going back to my slide about the perfect plant, look how many insects we could be growing on that black cherry or even the plum that I mentioned. Then we have willow in our area. That would be black willow, 455, birch like river birch, 413. Poplar, in this case, this is not tulip poplar. This is poplar as in cottonwood, 368. Then there's crabapple, blueberries. Remember, we were planting blueberries for fruit. Now we can see that not only can we get fruit out of them for our frugivores, but we can also grow some bugs as well. Down there at the bottom, you'll see hawthorn, Crataegus, 159. So this is especially good to know for smaller yards that if you say, well, I don't have room for all of these, perhaps you would consider picking something that would be in both groups. So here's a caterpillar that was in my yard. It happened to be on Fothergilla. And the only reason I found it was by flipping the leaf over. And there was only one there. So it was eating just a few leaves because I think that people worry that if they plant these things, that they're going to get just totally eaten up and they won't even be able to enjoy their plants. But it's not true. Nature knows how to adjust. The mom is only going to lay enough eggs that she feels that plant can handle, but she also knows that birds are going to eat some of them. So of all the eggs she lays, not all of them are going to make it to adulthood or even much more than one or two instars. So nature kind of balances that out for you. Now this one's a little different. I'm pretty sure that by the time these guys were done, that leaf was gone. But this was actually a river birch, by the way, and it was sitting in a pot in my driveway. And the wrens used to love my driveway and they flew through it all the time looking for bugs. So I am really confident that not all six of these made it to adulthood. Now, just remember, don't think of caterpillars as bugs. Think of them as bird food, as we're growing bird food. There's one that's a warbler with an inchworm, which is a type of moth caterpillar. Here's our top 12 perennial plants, and here's where you're going to start to see some crossover with our other categories. Goldenrod. Now, before you get excited, goldenrod, there's plenty of garden-worthy ones that you can be growing. We're not necessarily talking about the ones on the side of the road having to grow in your garden. There's lots of clumping ones. But I will tell you that I always am secretly glad to see all of that on the side of the road because I know what a powerful plant it is. And it's the host plant for 115 different Lepidoptera. There's our asters, 112. There's our sunflowers. So you can see we are really supporting the granivores here, as well as our insectivores when we plant things on this list. We got our honeysuckle down here, so that's good for the hummingbirds. There's our Rudbeckia. That was a great one for granivores. So you can do double duty here and plant things that support different types of birds in the same plant. Here's your asters. So definitely this one happens to be aromatic aster, which does get sold a lot in the fall. But all of those are going to turn into seeds for your birds, and it's also going to grow some caterpillars. This is a eupatorium in the fall, by the way, after it has gone to seed. And you can tell caterpillar's still working on it. Now, of course, caterpillars are going to try to hide. They don't want birds to eat them. So hopefully you can see the caterpillar here trying really hard to pretend that he's a leaf. But the bird's going to be able to find him. This was again in my yard. That bird just snatched it right off. What a tasty looking snack. Here's another one. There's the caterpillar right there. But I tell you, I saw it. I went inside to get my camera. And when I came back, it took me like 5 minutes to find it again, even though I knew it was there. But birds know. Now, some of you might say, Ellen, I know that I can grow parsley, fennel, and dill, and I can support black swallowtails. And that is true. This is a black swallowtail caterpillar on parsley, and parsley comes from the Mediterranean. It's not a native plant. So you might say, so I don't have to plant native plants, but that happens because parsley, fennel, and dill are in what's called the Apiaceae family, which is called the parsley family, and that's what their native host is. So here we have black swallowtail caterpillars. This is a later instar, so it looks a little different, on Angelica, which is one of its native parsley family plants. Here's golden Alexander, another native substitute, another host plant for black swallowtails. But I will tell you that is one of the very few examples of supporting a native insect on a non-native plant. And if you want this butterfly and you want her caterpillars, then you're going to have to plant pawpaw because this is the zebra swallowtail and it's only going to host on pawpaw, which is only native. So you're not going to be able to put parsley out for her. So that's how you grow bugs. Now, we still want to be successful, and native plants are no different than other plants that you're used to gardening with. You want to pick the right plants and you want to do your research just like you would have done for any exotic plant. Do you have sun? Do you have shade? Do you have wet or dry? You just need to spend a little time getting to know your site. And I will tell you a little tip that I learned a long time ago about evaluating sun versus shade. So you hear that some plants like full sun, some plants like part sun, part shade, or shade. That all has to do with the number of hours of sun that it gets. So full sun means that it gets 6 or more hours. It can get 3 hours in the morning. It could get 3 hours in the afternoon. That adds up to 6. It doesn't mean that it has to have bakingly hot sun all day long. As long as you get to 6, you can do that. So what you want to do is pick a sunny day and look at the spot that you're looking to add your plant to and go out on at the same time every hour. So like the top of the hour, 7 o'clock in the morning, is that spot sunny? If it is, then write that down, like a tick mark. Go back out at 8. Is it sunny? Okay, another tick mark. 9 o'clock, and then maybe after 1, it's in shade. So you count it up 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 6 hours. So that would be full sun, even though it's not getting any sun after 1. So that's how you can make sure that you're doing the right location for your plants. Because if you plant a full sun plant in the shade, then it's not going to bloom and it's probably eventually going to diminish and die away. What else can you do besides what you plant? Well, you can certainly avoid pesticides that kill the insects that we were trying to grow for the birds. And you want to especially be aware of systemic pesticides because those translocate the chemical to other parts, like the pollen, which is bad for bees. Now, the term that we use for those has been in the past neonicotinoids. And so, what you want to do is look to avoid plants that say complete insect killer or bug be gone, because those are really not only a broad spectrum, but they're being absorbed by the plant, and they show up in the leaves so that when caterpillars eat the leaves, it could actually kill them. And there's been many instances of people going to the store, buying milkweed, not realizing that systemic pesticides were used on it, and all of their caterpillars died. So that's why it's good to buy plants from growers that haven't used neonicotinoids. So come to our sale on Saturday because we don't either. This is something that showed up in Home Depot a number of years ago. It was meant, and they still are using them today. So if you go to Home Depot to buy something and it has this white tag in it, it is telling you that it has been treated with neonicotinoids. And while they are approved by the EPA, they're not approved by any bugs. So don't get that. You want to also leave your leaf litter. It's a natural mulch. It helps retain moisture. It's a slow release fertilizer. And more importantly for our birds, it supports ground dwelling insects that birds like the brown thrasher need to eat. That this one and the eastern towhee, you see them on the ground almost exclusively, and they're flipping through the leaves looking for roly-poly pill bugs and earthworms and whatever else lives under the leaf litter. So that's why you want to leave some, is so they have something to eat. You want to leave standing trees when possible because they provide home for cavity dwellers like the brown-headed nuthatch, which is a specialist in southeastern pine forests. And here's one at my house making a nest. This is a medium-sized dead pine, and they just excavate a hole in there and raise their babies, and it's great. So leave a few standing trees. You can ask your tree service to top it to a safe height. Of course, bugs are just under the bark, and so they're also getting bugs from under the bark in addition to using them for nesting. And of course, we've always heard about providing water and cover. We definitely want to have fresh water, so change that out at least every 7 days. Dense shrubs for nest building and safety. This doesn't have to be evergreen, so as long as they are dense. Um, some of the viburnums, especially if they get pruned, really create quite the little mini thicket. And you'll find out when the leaves fall off in the winter, and then you see all the birds' nests that you didn't notice were there during the summer. So they're using them. You can also have nest boxes, of course. This is a special one with a plate over it to create a smaller hole for the brown-headed nuthatch. So if you're looking to support brown-headed nuthatches, make sure you get the hole adapter that works for them. And of course, if you're doing all of this work, you want to be curious and have fun. You want to keep your eyes open so that you notice when nature takes up residence. And you almost have to think like a kid, right? We're creating nature. We want to make sure we take time to see it as well. And above all things, please plant native because that's what makes all this possible. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
All right, thanks, Ellen. That was awesome. something that I've had is when you look at Ellen, those lists that you gave, so you see oak species and the number of caterpillars that they attract. Um, Same thing for like goldenrod. Are there specialists within those plant families? Because we know within the oak family, I guess there's a whole bunch of different species, but are there some that only go to like a certain species of oaks or a certain species of goldenrod? Or is it in general that if they're attracted to one oak, they'll go to all of them?
I have not heard that there is a breakdown to a particular species for them. So I would say use whatever oak is appropriate for your ecoregion, which most of you are probably in the Piedmont, and it's appropriate for your yard. If you have a small yard, then try to choose something that's smaller. Georgia oak is a great small oak, for example. Or, like I said earlier, if your neighbor's got an oak, you can just adopt that oak and plant something else, and that will increase the diversity in the whole area. So maybe your neighbor has an oak, but nobody has a hawthorn. Add a hawthorn, and you've just bumped up the diversity in your little area.
So another question I had is, and I hear this from a lot of people. So they'll say, well, privet, I've heard it's bad, but man, the birds sure do love the privet seeds when they come out there. So it's got to be doing a good service for birds. How do you combat that, or how do you tell somebody that no, it's actually a drain on the ecosystem?
Yeah, the research shows that it's actually a fruit of last resort for them, that it is not their first choice. And they've also done nutritional analysis on the fruits to show that privet fruit is more like a Twinkie. It's full of sugars, not a lot of fat, versus the fruits of the spice bush, which are high in fat. And you'll notice they're usually one of the first to go. So yeah, while it is supporting them when nothing else is there, they basically, the privet is stealing the land from a more productive plant. And it's not
Mm.
growing any bugs either.
Right. And that's easy to tell.
Yes.
If you don't see it being munched on, it's not pulling its weight. Another thing I wanted to touch on, if you could give a better explanation, and you talked about the Virginia creeper growing up the side of your house. Talk about the relationship between vines and growing up something and actually having seeds.
Yeah. Oh, are you referring to that they need to climb in order to bloom?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true for a lot of them, that vines that climb need to climb, and it's good to give them that. Yeah, right. We've all seen Virginia creeper used as a ground cover, and it's not flowering when it's on the ground. We know that English ivy, for example, one of the worst things about letting it climb is that's when it becomes mature and fruits, flowers and fruits. So yeah, I think that is true, that vines do best when they are allowed to climb, and you can help them climb in a more appropriate place. I used to, at my house, I would let the Virginia creeper grow up, and then every other year I'd pull it down so it wouldn't hurt the house. So I made a little maintenance for myself.
And the Virginia creeper grows up my trees. So find it a good tree and it'll be very happy. Well, good. Well, thanks again. Thanks everybody for joining, and definitely thanks, Ellen, for your time and presenting the presentation.